if you are in an area like that where something is trending, the only way I think to stand out is to be the contrarian. If you are comfortable being the counter to what everybody else is saying, and that won't alienate you with your own customer base, I feel like being a contrarian or the friendly jerk is a great way to get your message out there.
Welcome to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness. Because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Mickie Kennedy believes that with some effort and a little money, the possibilities are endless. Mickie is an expert at helping small businesses and startups increase their visibility and credibility. He founded eReleases 24 plus years ago after realizing that small businesses desperately need a press release service they can actually afford, giving them access to the media and to a national newswire, all with a personal touch. Mickie loves British sci-fi, writes poetry on Mondays, lives with 2 feuding cats, and he's here today to talk about PR and marketing. Mickie, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you for showing up. Really excited to talk about PR, as we were talking about before we were recording. It's kind of like the last thing on a marketer's list, but it's the first thing on it's the last thing they want to pay for. And it's the first thing that they want to get is buzz, is coverage. And usually in marketing, it's a question of advertising or not. And that's it. PR doesn't usually make the list of tactics. How do you define the difference between paid, owned, and earned media? And what are some common misconceptions around these terms? I know it's a big question. Take it at your leisure. Unpack it as you will.
Sure. So basically, earned media, which is what we try to get at eReleases, is getting the news out there and having a journalist actually write the article about you. So they take your press release and they craft it into their own story or article that gets put out there. And it's different from like paid advertising, where you get to control all the different aspects, what the call to action is and things like that, where in a press release you might have a call to action, but it completely gets eliminated in the article that gets written. So that's not unusual. But I think the real big thing is how people interact with the different forms of paid advertising versus, earned media. And generally, when someone sees advertising, their blinders are up. They want to discount every claim that you make. And, the conversion rates for, advertising might be under 10%. But when you have something like earned media, I've had clients who come to me and said, we got 200 visitors from this article, and over 100 of them bought. Is that possible that there's a 50% plus conversion? And I point out that, probably a lot more people saw the article, but only 200 of them felt, the need to click through. But of that, half of them did convert. And that's not unusual. When people read an article, it's almost like an implied endorsement that takes place. It's third-party corroboration or social proof a journalist has written about you. And that really does create a sort of, goodwill with the reader. And a lot of times readers will go along with this story and get invested in it and want to do business with that company. I can remember many times I've seen a blog post or somebody talking about a Kickstarter campaign, an article, and then go to the Kickstarter campaign with the sole effort of supporting them. And that's what happens with earned media, which is harder to get with paid advertising. And it's just one of those things that when it comes to most people, we just blindly censor and alter what we see when we notice it's paid.
Yeah, exactly right. But it's weird because it rides this dichotomy, the dichotomous line in between, ads are endorsements in some kind of way in the place where they're distributed from. But yeah, there's more in-depth engagement, possible traffic. What are the barriers? Why aren't people doing PR? I mean, mostly I would say it's because you don't have anything that's newsworthy. I mean, most marketers, no one cares. Is that sort of the barrier in between PR? How do you help people find a good story that's worth sharing or getting that buzz going?
Right. So I created a free masterclass for my customers that goes through the strategic types of press releases you could be doing. The one that when clients come to me and just say, I'm about to give up on PR, it's just not working for me. I've done two, three, four releases. And I always point out that, a proper PR campaign is like 6 to 8 releases. But have you considered doing a survey or study within your industry? And their eyes glaze over. Oh, it sounds like so much work. But I walk them through it. I'm like, you can get an account with SurveyMonkey, create 4 questions per page, 4 pages, 16 questions, put some odd questions at the end. So if they give up 3/4 of the way, you've still got their results. And then you ask really compelling questions, things that are really relevant today. Because really good surveys are ones that take your temperature or your industry's temperature on a topic that's relevant right now. So what's going on in your industry? What are the changes that are going on, coming out of the pandemic? Are you struggling to get people to work in the office again? Or are you having, trouble potentially hiring or potentially facing layoffs? What's really going on with you could be a barometer of what's going on in your industry.
Hmm.
And asking those types of questions can get really interesting results. And then your job is to pick the 2 to 4 questions that you thought were the biggest aha moments from the survey based on the responses, and then talk about why you feel those answers skewed a particular way,
Right.
and put some quotes in there by you, and all of a sudden release that to the media. And generally when people do that following my method, they usually get between 4 and 14 articles written about them, which if you know anything about PR, people do not guarantee results, but I have yet to have that fail, that approach fail to get results. It's a little bit of work. I get pushback as people like, well, I don't know who to send the survey to.
Right.
And I often coach them that, there's small and independent trade associations in every industry. Reach out to them, ask if they'll send it to their members. As long as there's like 1,500 or more members, you'll probably get like a couple hundred results, which is fine. And tell them that you're doing this survey, and that if they send it to their members, you'll include them in the press release you'll be issuing over the wire. And the small and independent trade associations love that because they don't get a lot of media attention themselves. The large trade associations do. And so that's a really great way to sort of benefit that. I've had some pushback and say, could we co-brand the survey? I see no downside for that. It just aligns yourself with this trade association. So I feel like it
Right.
can be a really, great solution to solving all of the bottlenecks in doing a survey study approach for a press release. But there's other types of things that you can do. I mean, one of the things that people often ignore is their story. What is it about them that made this company come into being? Is it, obstacle you overcame as part of the business, or a personal obstacle like a health issue? Or what was it that made you inspired to develop your company? If you look at Shark Tank, when everybody comes, they often share their personal story.
Right.
And if you read like Fast Company and Inc. magazine and places like that, they often will talk about people's obstacles. They'll often open with that in their article about, hey, this people were facing this, and then how they dealt with it and what the outcome was. And so, what is your story? You want to be authentic. You don't have to be inspirational, but if there is something inspirational, you want to make sure that you tout your horn, because no one else is going to do it. No one else is going to point at you and say, this guy's a hero. You kind of have to put yourself out there tactfully as the hero for people to align themselves with. And it is, it can come across as a little, I don't know if it's tasteless or just like, is it appropriate to tout your own horn? I think it is. I think if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it for you. So claim it and incorporate it into your story and go from there. Other approaches that people can use with press releases is being sure to insert data and stats anywhere they can
Mm.
in a press release. There's a lot of interesting publicly available data that's out there that you don't have to go and survey. But if you put it together, it can really strengthen your argument in a press release. Or say your product serves a certain need, and you can go use numbers to talk about why this need is so prevalent in your industry and how you solve it. Journalists just align themselves with data and numbers and analysis. So anything you can do to sort of strengthen that in your press release, you're going to do well with. And other things that I've had work really well with clients is brainstorming their industry for blind spots or gaps, things that if you were at a trade show, you would want to grab a colleague and just, talk a little bit about a particular issue. Like, hey, have you noticed that all of our net 30s are now taking 60 to 90 days to get paid? Are you experiencing that on your end? That could be something that could be coming together in your industry, and the trade publications just haven't picked up on it. And I've had several clients where we broke something, a trend that the industry wasn't quite aware of, and we did really well getting particularly industry publications to pick it up.
So, and it kind of brings to mind, I'm thinking like, that's awesome. I love all this stuff. I mean, to really get things juicy, you have to find that story, look for data, find those blind spots, start a survey. I mean, there's so many options here. But one thing that I'm seeing is purpose washing. Like green stuff or those things. Like, is that in? I know a lot of people are plucking that, but do you see that purpose-driven campaigns perform less or more better than some of these more industry-specific things? Like, if you go off about purpose, is that exciting for a journalist, or will they use that? And then also, like, you could just make whatever purpose up. I mean, can you rap about that a little bit? Because people are purpose. People love a purpose.
Sure. I think purpose washing and also news jacking, where you sort of try to take something that's trending and jump on it.
Yeah.
Is one of those things that generally doesn't work very well. It probably works very well for the first person to break it, but outside of that, it's like all of a sudden, when their Target had a credit card breach years ago, there was like 1,500 press releases over the next 3 months talking about the Target credit card breach. All of them mostly security experts in some vertical or something related to retail. And they all were thinking this was their entry into getting some notoriety or exposure. And almost none of them did. If you are in an area like that where something is trending, the only way I think to stand out is to be the contrarian. So if you are comfortable being the counter to what everybody else is saying, and that won't alienate you with your own customer base, I feel like being a contrarian or the friendly jerk is a great way to get your message out there. It's when everybody's talking about how great electric cars are, if you're the one person raising your hand and saying not so fast, getting these minerals out of the earth is involves child labor and other problems, not to mention what are we going to do with these cars and these batteries at the end of their life? Are we creating more landfill issues and environmental waste? That's a way to be reasonable, but yet get that across that there are things that you should be aware of when you're talking about this. And what happens is a journalist covers a story, and they're supposed to be fair and balanced and cover all the viewpoints, but often they just go to print with one viewpoint because no one's raising their hand saying, I'm the contrarian to all of these things, and feel free to interview me, because they'll plug you in to story after story that mentions that topic, where there's 1,500 people trying to join the topic that everybody agrees with, that, hey, electric cars are great. And if you're the one of the few people saying they're not, you can get plugged into a lot more articles than the other people can.
Yes. Wow, that's great. Whoa, so juicy. And this next question, I saw this in your press kit. You said media coverage can improve conversion. You basically explain that third party corroboration. It's coming in a different package than an ad. Is that what you're speaking about, or is just how does media coverage improve conversion?
Sure. So a little bit of what I talked about is the people, the leads that you get from it are going to be higher converters, better customers, less likely to price shop because they've got this goodwill associated with you. But you can then take that article and share it with your social media, put it in your newsletter, share it with your customers as well as your leads. And the same leads, you're always going to have a population in your leads that are on the fence about whether they're going to use you or not. And it could go 50-50. 50% of those people will skew towards you. If you get them to read that article that created all this goodwill and made people want to do business with you, I suspect a lot more than 50% are going to eventually convert, because they're going to feel a lot more comfortable with that social proof or credibility, and be more likely to use you.
Right.
I mean, when they click through, they'll see it's an article, they'll see that it's written by somebody. It will not make their ad blinders go up and discount what's there. Also, I had one client who we were really good using the researching your industry for blind spots. They were in the carpet industry. They were a local carpet company in New Jersey. And we did really well getting their trade publications to pick them up and write about them again and again, because they were talking about blind spots in their industry. In particular, they were attacking the big box home improvement stores, which they have to compete against, and how bad they are.
Right.
And so they put together, I pointed out that all the people reading these carpet trade publications are not their customers. So how is this helping you? And so they said, when they go and give someone a quote and go to their home and do the measuring and everything, they take this brag book and they show that they've been picked up like in 30 different publications, the local newspaper, New Jersey Magazine, but all of these floor trade industry publications like Floor Covering Today, Floor Weekly, all of these places. And they just sort of thumb through it and show them that they've been, nationally recognized in their industry. And they started converting about 17% more of those leads when they gave a quote, just by doing that. As a matter of fact, they actually adjusted their quotes up they would increase them by 5%, and they still converted better than they've had previously by adding that brag book. And so that just shows that there's a certain percentage of people, just by skimming, seeing the headlines and these mastheads of these publications that were printed out from the internet and put in a book, that make them feel like this is the company we should go for. It may not be the best price, it may not be the best, this or that, but I feel very comfortable with these people. And when they say, very rarely do we ever have to come back and restretch the carpet, and the padding we have, lasts a lifetime, they believe that. Where someone who's telling them the same stuff and not delivering that credibility, it's harder to convert those.
It's huge. I mean, I'm just thinking of all the trust icons on websites, like sure. Featured with or partnered with, and you get some big names in there, and then you're kind of seeing things a little differently. And it seems like the customer's in control. They're doing all this research. They're really like, but no, then you see some stuff in the New York Times, Nike, Coke, something like that. Like now I don't even care. Like, I believe you. There's no way that, because any Yahoo can buy an ad. But it just takes something special to get a write-up. But you mentioned analytics, and I would suppose that the main way to measure the effectiveness of a PR campaign is sales and traffic and those kind of things. But you mentioned in your press kit about getting startup founders specifically more analytical minded, paying attention to the metrics. How do you measure PR effectiveness, and how can listeners tighten those analytical skills to discern those signals?
Right. So PR is frustrating from a marketer standpoint, because you can't just take a tracking URL and use that for a campaign. Generally, journalists are going to just take your main website URL and use it without any tracking and stuff like that. But there are things you can do, like looking at your analytics. If you just began a campaign and you saw it got a few articles, you can look and say, hey, did we get a revenue boost this week or this month from that? And make the association that it probably was from that. But it is harder to track for those purposes. But I find that generally, asking people how they found out about you is a great way to discover little nuggets of places you got picked up that you maybe didn't notice yourself. It's surprising the number of people who say, "Oh, I heard about eReleases by this guy mentioned it," and it's like, "Oh, I don't even know that guy," but that's great. But it is nice to know where people are coming from,
Right.
and so adding it to data that you collect as people come through your forms or through your ordering systems can really help you quite a bit. And I think that some people are willing to just share where they found out about you if you ask.
Is there a proper way to ask that question without leading them on? Because I remember working at a law firm, and it was I like I mentioned specific media channels. They were doing TV, radio, they were online, and all that stuff. And I remember asking, what how did it wasn't how did you hear about us? It was like, what made you call us, or something like that. Do you have any tips on how to get that attribution when you're talking to people? Because they might make stuff up. They might just
Sure.
say, "Oh, I thought I saw a radio ad," or "You're not running radio," or "That was a billboard." No billboards were out there. Some people don't remember, and that ends up being kind of a problem. Do you have any advice in the attribution question?
I've seen someone do it really well where they're like, let us know how you found out about us, and then in parentheses something to the effect of, so we can share this opportunity with them, or better know where people are coming from, or just something like that. I think that when you just say, how did you hear about us, and then you got Google podcast, things
Right.
like this, you don't know. I mean, with Google, you don't know. Most people don't know when they click on a Google ad that it's an ad. There's a lot, and I think that's one of the reasons that Google's done so well, that the ads sort of look like prominent search results.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that has really been one of the things. But I find I like the other, where you click on other, and then a field opens or is available for them to
Right.
actually write what it is. I
Right.
had someone recently ask how I found out about them, and they had there was a new directory in their industry, and it wasn't one of the options. So I clicked other, and there was nothing to add. So it's like, oh, I would have given them that nugget to at least let them know where I came from if they had just
Hmm.
provided a field for doing so.
So it's also, the onus is on the people asking the question to make sure those options are there, or
Sure.
so it can't just. But also type in something, because you might find out that Gary from wherever Iowa did it. You're like, I don't know Gary, but thank him. Um, your press kit is amazing. I keep referring to your press kit and your PR. I don't know why. I wonder why. Maybe your press kit's really good. But you had the tantalizing topic, how to know when to fire yourself, mentioned. And
Sure.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people are wondering, like, when do I can myself? What inspired you to say this, and talk, can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So uh this was like 2013, 14, and 15. I was dealing with massive turnover at my company. The average editor lasted a year, and they were usually fresh out of school, did it for a year, and then moved on to bigger and better things. And I always complained about it. I was part of a marketing mastermind where I always complained about my staff isn't great and there's this terrible turnover. And one of the people in the marketing mastermind was an HR consultant, and she said, "Hey, Mickie, you wasting way too much time and energy in your marketing mastermind talking during your hot seats about turnover and your staff." And she goes, "I'm an expert in this. Let me figure out what's going on. I'll interview your staff. I'll interview your customers. I'll look at your job postings, and I'll figure out what you're doing wrong." And she did. And she came back and said, "Hey, your customers love your staff. They feel they get great customer service. Your staff hates you. You're a micromanager. And the reason they leave in a year is because they can't believe they lasted that long. You're always standing behind them, berating them, and never giving them praise or encouragement or anything.
Oh,
You're just
no.
nitpicking all the things that they do wrong." And I'm like, oh wow. And I when it comes to business, I just take people's words. So I just said, I'm the problem here. I'm going to stop being a micromanager. And then not even a few hours later, I'm in the office standing behind someone who just puts the phone down and said, hey, next time you talk to someone about that subject, maybe you should phrase it like this. And then I just said, oh, I can't do this anymore. So I got the staff together and said, hey, it's April. This was April 2015. I said, I'm going home. I'm going to focus on the marketing and education and outreach. And you guys just keep doing what you're doing. Allison's been here the longest. I'm going to put her in charge. And any problems, just reach out to me or her. And that's when I left the business. And it was so freeing because I felt tied, twisted, like everything wasn't right, everything wasn't good. I just, I just couldn't get through the fact that other people are never going to say things the way you're going to say it. Other
Mm,
people are never going to do things exactly the way you do it. And the more control that you try to get out of people, reading scripts and all of that stuff, it doesn't come across as natural.
mhm.
I don't think it works. Just have like bullets of what it should be accomplished in the communication and leave it at that and let them fill it in the way they feel most comfortable. And, I think, we probably doubled in revenue since then. It's worked out really well. Most of the people that were there, all but one person that was there in April of 2015 is still there. One person
Wow.
left after 3 years and said, I was only planning to stay there a year, but it was just so great not having you there that I stayed 3 years.
Oh my God.
I
Well,
mean,
I mean, how most people don't have this level of insight. It's interesting that someone else had to bring it to your attention.
yeah,
And do you think part of that? And I'm just imagining all the startup founders out there just burning the candle, just actually throwing the candle into the fireplace. Like it isn't both ends; it's all over. But part of that hustle, part of that twist and turns, they feel like that's the meat of the moment. How like is your advice? Just get somebody else to take a look if you're feeling like that kind of pressure or you're feeling like something's not going right. Is the advice to be like, just check and look in the mirror because you might be the problem?
right. I mean, I think with my standpoint, I wasn't doing surveys of my customers. I didn't know that they felt that the customer service was so excellent. I assumed it was terrible because I wasn't getting out of the staff what I was wanting. So I assumed they weren't either. But it's just the opposite. I think that, having metrics in your business is really important and listening to it is extremely important. I discovered I'm not a business guy. I'm come from a poetry background, so business was a little. I had to adapt to it, kicking and screaming and
Sure.
learning the entire way.
Yeah.
But I learned early with paid advertising, A/B split testing, and applied that to so many parts of my business that had nothing to do with advertising. I had one. We used to send shock and awe packages to new customers, and we spent like $60 on that. And we send them like crab chips, Edgar Allan Poe action figure, all kinds of stuff because we're in the Baltimore, Maryland area, and I loved it. It was wacky, had a lot of little fun and corny stuff in it. And I had one person come back to me and say she felt it was a little unprofessional. And all my friends that were marketers said, oh, screw her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. But the other part of me who's analytical through growth and learning said, let's measure it. So we took half of the new customers that came in, sent them the shock and awe package. The other half, we just sent a book with a letter welcoming them to the company. We started measuring the lifetime value of those people. And at the 1 year mark, it was obvious that the people who received the book were like double the revenue. And at the 2 year mark, it was like more than triple lifetime value. And so we got rid of the box. And I don't know why, but for new customers, getting a wacky box doesn't really, I guess, engender you or endear you to the people. They wanted more professional resources and tips and things like that were more press release specific.
Well, and so I mean, I'm a jazz musician. So, and I got into marketing. So I was also kicking and screaming, but also playing like a screaming sax solo while I was like, I don't like business, boobily doop. But I like that wacky stuff. I love the creativity. I think like more kind of spicy ads that kind of leave people hanging. And that's how I got into it originally. And then I was like, hold on. Like maybe just being crazy for no reason, it isn't the best option. And it's interesting that advertising, well, a lot of advertising's boring as hell. Because they're like, I don't know, car advertisement now is just bothering. They're just like, they just show you a couple features and that's it. But there's no like story or anything. I mean, maybe if you have a bunch of money, it'd be a good idea to do that. But it's interesting that your career and your expertise rides this line of like combining a bit of that interesting, creative sort of stance, but then putting it through PR, like making it look official, making it feel official. I think a lot of people are interested in doing creative stuff, but nobody wants to bankroll that creative stuff because I think you're on this crap chat Edgar Allan Poe thing. They're like, what's the real seriousness here? This doesn't feel right. And so PR is this great place for people to get a bunch of attention in a serious way through some kind of like, I don't know, some platform specific thing where people can say, oh, it's not just wild and crazy. I think it's just interesting that you're like living this life and your stories are based on you. How to know when you fire yourself. That's when I was going to fire myself. I like that this is all very self-referential. So story time. You told us about the carpet folks, which I'm now interested in reading Carpet Trade Association stuff because that's just tantalizing. Do you have an example of a client that you worked with in a PR capacity that saw like real amazing results? And then do you have any PR horror stories? The bigger the dumpster fire, the better, Mickie.
Sure. So on my website, I have under case studies one for Dining Bond Initiative, and they were set up during the pandemic as a very short-lived initiative that was meant to try to help restaurants that were closed during the pandemic.
Oh, that's smart.
And basically what it was is you could nominate your favorite local restaurant. If the people at Dining Bond was able to get in touch with them, you could give money that would be sort of held, they call it a dining bond, but it's like a gift certificate. And the money directly went immediately to the restaurant.
Interesting.
It did extremely well. We quit looking at local newspapers when all together we had over 150 places that picked it up. I think the Wall Street Journal, CNN, Bloomberg,
Whoa.
Harvard Business Review,
Woo.
Fox,
Woo.
Forbes,
Yay.
Reuters.
Yeah.
James Beard Foundation, a lot of food publications picked it up as well, Wine and Spirits magazine, and just dozens and dozens of local newspapers across the US picked it up. Generated in excess of over $10 million in revenue for closed businesses. And this was their marketing effort, was just one press release. So I challenge any marketer to say, hey, spend $400 and get 10 million plus in revenue. And that's
it's not gonna happen. Oh,
and I think what worked so well for them, it was a perfect storm because here was something positive and actionable, and we were confused. We didn't know what was going on. There was a lot of negative news or uncertainty, and people were sitting at home not sure what they could do. And here was something that they could do. We all have a favorite restaurant that we love, and we're concerned when they're all shut down. And here was something that you could do something positive, and I think that's kind of why it worked out so well. And
amazing. Oh my God, the ROI on that. I mean, ROI, my eyeballs are flying out of my head. Now tell us like a real plane crash of a story. Do you have one of those? And you don't have to name names, Mickie.
Sure. So I had one guy who invented something, I don't know, I think it was like soap product that the thing was, you would dump it into a hurricane and it would dissipate the hurricane.
Yeah.
And at the
Yeah.
time, he got a government contract to test this out in the Gulf, off of Florida and Texas. And there was a storm brewing, and he sent out the press release, and they shipped him out to do it. I don't think anything positive came from it, the test that they did, but the press release generated so much attention. And about 6 months later, the guy called me and said, "Hey, so I was so absorbed with going with the government and being flown to Texas and battling this hurricane that I deleted all the messages on my voicemail, but there was one from Good Morning America, one from Fox, one from this place, one from, all these places." He goes, "They all wanted to interview me." He goes, "I deleted them. Can you give me their contact information so I can call them back and be on Good Morning America and all these places?" And I just like, I don't have their direct number,
I don't
that
have
was that
your
was
voicemail, you fool.
exactly. I don't understand why he did that, but I just told him, I said, "It's also been 6 months. I doubt that they're as interested now. We're no longer in hurricane season." And so, when you put something out there, you have to be ready for it
Yes.
and prepared for the traffic and the inquiries. There are some things that are more likely to result in people leaving you messages and asking for you to talk. Often they'll call you if they need more information, or they want a quote, or they just want to talk to you live on radio or TV, for
Hello.
example. And but often stories get written with no one contacting you. It's usually, if there's adequate information in the press release, they'll just run and print it. And in
Right.
the case that he had, it was something that people wanted to interview and talk to him about, and he just wasn't available. And so I feel like that was pretty disastrous from a standpoint of what not to do. It would have been, better off just trying to contact some of these people and just explain that I'm not really available right now, but if you have some questions, forward them to me and I'll get to them when I can, or something to that effect. But it just wasn't handled well. Because journalists will move on from a story if they don't get someone contacting them back.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and what's so odd is marketing and advertising. It seemed like some kind of like low budget casino. Like, you're going to put your money in here, you might win. The house is going to win because we have your money, and
Sure.
we can do your ads and whatever. But I think a lot of people have hesitancy around marketing, particularly startups, people with strap budgets. Everyone has a strap budget, by the way. No one is just like, yeah. I mean, Coke is probably like that. But God bless them. Drink Coke. Sorry, this podcast brought to you by Coke. It is not. This would be a Pepsi podcast. No, Diet Pepsi for Mickie. What I'm trying to say is, after many tangents, most people are prepared for things to go horribly in marketing and advertising. Very few people are prepared for things to go super good. And I think that's why this guy was like, "Oh, I didn't know. It went really good and I wasn't ready." I'm just like face palming. Like, be prepared for things to go right. Like, real good. Like, do you think that's part of your advice, like your survival advice? Like, sure, things might suck, you might not get picked up, but what if you do? Be prepared for that. Is that some of your
Yes. I had
advice?
one author who was self-published who got picked up on the front page of the USA Today's entertainment section,
Hey,
and talking about his book, which is like hard for someone who's published traditionally, and here was someone who was self-published who got that. And he didn't do much with it. And so I ended up talking to him later, and he was talking about how people weren't letting him. He called his local bookstore and inquired about doing a reading there and signing, and they weren't interested. And I said, "Well, did you show them the clipping from USA Today and say, 'Look, I've been picked up by USA Today'?" He goes, "No." He goes, "Would they respond to that?" And I was like,
oh,
"Yes, of course they would.
ouch.
Of course they would." And I also
Oh,
told them that I would also position it as, hey, tell me what's the weakest night of your business, and I will market my book signing and reading using, Facebook events and a few other places. And all of a sudden you're positioning them with, what's the lousiest night of your business? I'm going to try to drive more customers into it for you. I said, there's you
so
have
many
to sort of,
ways. So
right,
many ways.
you were approaching it as what your goal was just get the reading, but you have to look at what the bookstore's goal is, and that's to make more money with less work. And you just saying, hey, I just want to show up and do a book signing, it looks like, to them, more work. But if you're saying, hey, I want to drive more people into your store on a non-busy night where I do a book reading or signing, you're going to get better results. And I think that, unfortunately, a lot of authors, just like other people, they're not business minded. And, so he took that and went back off, and he got his book signing at his local bookstore after that.
Nice, because you have good advice that just makes sense when you really think about it. But one of the thing, like marketing, you do the campaign or you release the thing, or it's content, it's SEO, it's whatever, it's a paid ad or whatever. But you also have to market the marketing and selling it internally too, like getting your sales folks aligned with it, saying like, hey, here's something that you can share with your prospects or something like that. Like a lot of people, their brain just turns off after they ship something. They're not thinking about distribution. They're not thinking about redistribution, and it's interesting that, I don't know, it seems like you're facing that problem in the PR world too. It's like somebody wrote up anything about you, share that. Share everything. So anyway, that's maybe a statement, not a question. But you've said so many amazing things about the tactical approach to PR for people who think they don't have a story, surveys, examples of when to fire yourself, examples of when things go right and be prepared for that, A/B testing. You've said all these amazing things, but if you could create a bumper sticker, the Mickie Kennedy bumper sticker, what's your one piece of advice to the audience about PR?
There is a big misconception that PR is just for big companies. And I would tell you that journalists are just like other people. They like to be seen as curators. So they're not going to pull out a new MacBook and talk about it and really wow their audience. But if they talk about a piece of software that's pretty obscure, maybe it's done by a mom and pop shop or a home-based business, a lot of people will appreciate it because it's very unlikely they've come across it. So don't discount you being small as being insignificant and not open to getting PR. It's actually a gift. The smaller you are and the less well known you are, because it gives the journalists those kudos that they like when they spotlight you and share your story with their readers.
Oh, that's beautiful. So, how can people learn more about you and connect with you online, Mickie?
So the website's eReleases.com. All of our social medias on the lower right. I mentioned I had a free masterclass on press release strategies. It's open for anyone at no cost. It's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. And it's less than an hour-long video, but it really gives you a good audit of strategic types of press releases you could be doing about for you or your company, the types of press releases that generally do get media pickup.
Cheese or chocolate?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Cheese or chocolate?
Chocolate.
Pancakes or French toast?
Pancakes.
Oh, you waited a little bit there. You were thinking. Are you sure?
That's a good French toast in my past.
I know. But he said pancakes. It's too late. We're moving on. Ooh, this is tough. Pineapple pizza or candy corn?
Pineapple pizza.
You don't like candy corn?
No.
They need better PR. Lose sleep or skip a meal?
Skip a meal.
Yeah, I need to sleep. Have you had sleep? It's great. This I think I know, but we'll ask anyway. Fiction or nonfiction?
I I'm going to say nonfiction because of my business training that I feel like I've gotten so much out of really good nonfiction that's really helped the business and helped me personally that I don't get from fiction, but I appreciate fiction and I love where fiction comes from.
Yes, exactly. And finally, predictability or excitement?
Predictability.
Every time, 100%.
Most times.
What Gets Measured is a NinjaCat podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you find your podcasts. Share this episode on social and visit us on the web at ninjacat.io.